Chapter 16. The True Culprit. Inaz remained unconscious throughout the night. Even after the Saudi man finished his animalistic rape and left, she continued to be comatose. The wicked man had brutally raped her unconscious body 3 times. While raping her, he caused serious cuts and bruises all over her body. Even her privates were bleeding when he quenched his burning lust and went. He sucked and licked her breasts and private parts as a mad dog. He also sodomized her once. While repeatedly was raping her, the evil Saudi man didn't bother whether she was alive or dead. He knew no one would come for her rescue. At that time, only her husband and his Egyptian chauffeur were still inside the living room. Osama was dead drunk. The Egyptian chauffeur was the Arab man who blocked Inaz's escape and assisted his employer to carry her back to her bed. He was the only one who wasn't drunk that night. After his evil boss had viciously raped the defenseless Sudanese bride, he dropped him back home in his expensive brand new Mercedes-Benz car. The 2 wicked Arabs didn't bother to wake Osama up and inform him about his unconscious wife, who was bleeding all over her body and dying. During the brutal rape of his wife, the gay and pimp husband was lying blind drunk on a sofa bed in the living room. Inaz surfaced out of her long coma at afternoon of the following day. It was the time when Muslim men go for their compulsory Friday public prayer. Every inch in her body was bleeding and giving her excruciating pain. Although she became half-conscious, still she could not move a limb of her dormant body. She tried to call for help, but her voice failed her. With so much difficulty, she was able to turn her body over. She fell flat on the concrete floor. The solid floor caused her to slip in coma again. She broke her nose bone and some of her front teeth. Her mouth now was bleeding too. Inaz might die any moment. There was no one there to witness her lonely death. It took Inaz another couple of hours before she regained her consciousness. She began to crawl on her hands and knees. She moved slowly by dragging her broken body forward. She managed to crawl out of her bedroom until she reached the living room. Inaz had not a single piece of cloth on her body. When she entered the living room, she saw her husband lying half-naked on a sofa. There was a foul odor in the room. He was still sleeping and snoring loudly as if he was burning in hell, being tormented for his many evil deeds. There was a mixture of nasty smell of vomiting, alcohol, tobacco, and urine. The dirty man had drunk so much until he peed in his underwear. His mouth was opened and dirty stuff was coming out of it. He looked so repulsive and disgusting. Inaz managed to reach him and shock him out of his hibernating state. He woke up with startle and screamed loudly as if he scared that someone had come to kill him. He then pretended to be shocked to see his wife in that miserable condition, fully naked and wounded. "What has happened to you, Inaz?" "I have been raped last night," Inaz spoke with very faint voice. "Last night I was sober and awake until the last man left the house. 2 of your evil men have attacked me and one of them has raped me inside my bedroom. Why didn't you scream and call me?" "I did, but you didn't come for my rescue because you are the one who gave our bedroom's key to those 2 Saudi men. I am going to call the police and expose your wicked deeds. You are not my husband. You are such a dirty man who sells his wife to other men. Come on, Inaz. How dare you accuse me with such a nasty accusation? How then those evil men got our bedroom's key, and you didn't come to rescue me when I shouted and called your name many times? Is this one of your new dramas that you want to nail me with this crime of rape? No one among my friends would dare to touch my wife. If at all you are raped, then your rapist would be an intruder or burglar who broke in while I was sleeping. No, my rapist is one of your evil friends and you know him and helped him to come and assault and rape me." "Shut up, Inaz. If you repeat those words again, I would kill you. You must call the police and ambulance. I need an immediate medical attention." "No, I am not calling the police. You want to accuse me and send me to jail for such a serious crime. If you are innocent, why do you scare of the police? Can you describe to me the two men who have attacked you? I know them and I had seen both of them before in this house. And who are they? I would tell the police who are they. Listen Inaz, I would not allow you to drag me to the prison and spoil my name and destroy my life. If you want, I would call a doctor to come and treat you. He is one of my Pakistani friends. No, Inaz screamed on top of her voice. You must call the police and call them right away. Okay, let me first phone all my friends who were here last night and from them ascertain what had happened in my house. If you don't call the police, I am going to phone them myself. I said we are not going to inform the police until we know who has raped you. Inaz understood that her husband just wanted to prevent her from exposing his evil deeds. She became certain that he had a hand in her rape. She suspected that he had sold her to those two wicked Saudi Arabs who entered her room and one of them has brutally raped her. Wherefore, she ignored her husband and crawled towards the phone and picked the receiver up. Inaz had no idea which number to dial to reach the Riyadh police. Her husband ran from his sofa and violently snatched the phone from her hand and pushed her down. After that, he held her legs and dragged her like an animal until her bedroom. While dragging her, Inaz was crying and begging him to stop hurting her. The wicked man didn't give heed to her tears and begging. When he brought her back to the room in which she was violently and repeatedly raped, he slapped her many times. You want to drag me to jail by falsely accusing me of being a pimp husband who sold you to his Saudi friends, Osama screamed on the face of his wounded and violently raped wife. You are worse than a pimp. You are a dirty gay, addictive gambler, heavy drunkard, and useless Sudanese man. You are stigma to the Sudanese people in Saudi Arabia. I would expose you in this country and in Sudan too. Okay Inaz, you would remain locked up in this room until you come to your senses and stop accusing me of being a pimp who sold his wife to his friends. Chapter 17. The Vicious Circle. Inaz was imprisoned inside her house. Her husband locked her up whenever he went out or went to his work. Every time he ventured out of his house, Osama used a big padlock and locked the outside door. Inaz had no any means of contacting the outside world. Her husband disconnected the landline phone. He was using a cell phone, which he carried with him everywhere he went. Inaz could break the window glass and jump out and run away. But, if she took such a foolish step, she knew the consequences would be dire. She knew the law in the Saudi Arabia would not allow the woman to step out of her house without being accompanied by her husband or a male muharram. A muharram is any close relative that a woman cannot marry, such as her father, brother, grandfather, or grown-up son. So, if Inaz ran away, she would definitely fall in the hands of the Saudi correctional police officers. Besides severely flogging her, such a woman would be gang-raped by those unrighteous police of Allah. And if she survived the beating and the raping, she would be returned to her husband in chains. Even if she managed somehow to reach the Riyadh International Airport, Inaz would not be allowed to fly anywhere without the permission of her husband. Moreover, her husband had taken her passport and burned it. He didn't give her a single Saudi riyal. So, Inaz became hopeless and helpless prey in the hands of a wicked husband. So far, Inaz lived for 4 months with her gay husband in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. In addition, she lived 2 weeks imprisoned in the house, as if she was a dangerous creature. But, Inaz left her husband with no choice except to keep her away from the outside world. If she contacted her family in Sudan or reached the Sudanese embassy at the Riyadh, Osama's life would be ruined. So, her husband was either to lock her up or kill her. Those were the only 2 open options for him to hide his crimes and shame. Meanwhile, Osama continued his social life with his bad friends. As before, every weekend some of those Saudi thugs would show up and spend the whole night in drinking, smoking, and gambling. Also, Osama's male lover was a regular visitor to the house. And whenever he came, he would sodomize his wife Osama. After that fateful night in which Inaz's virginity was violently stolen, Osama gambled the honor of his wife and won the bet twice. One time, he gambled his wife against a Toyota Corolla and he won the car. The second time, he gambled the virtue of his wife against 5,000 Saudi Arabian Riyals and he won too. 5,000 Saudi Riyals equal $1,333 US. After Mr. Mohammed bin al-Shamar claimed the virginity of Inaz, every Saudi womanizer wanted to get the lovely Sudanese bride too. But, because the sexy bride had already lost her virginity, her value had decreased. Her first rapist refused to gamble again with his expensive brand new Mercedes-Benz car. Osama begged him to do so, but he refused. At first, he tried to convince Osama to allow him to have sex with his wife again and again because he won her as his jariya, or his sex slave, but the pimp husband said it was one-time deal. Osama's decision was collectively backed up by other gamblers. They all said, if at all Mr. Mohammed bin al-Shamri wanted to sleep again with the lovely Sudanese bride, then he had to gamble by his expensive car. The Saudi rapist refused to agree for a second game. Nonetheless, the pimp husband was so happy when he won the Toyota Corolla. Even though it was an old Japanese car, still Osama was on the moon when he received its key from the loser. On the third weekend, Osama's luck failed him again. This time, the deflowered Sudanese bride was raped against 1,000 Saudi Riyals, which equivalent to $266 US. The winner was another notorious womanizer. He had 4 wives and 2 maidservants. They were all available for his sexual satisfaction, but this thug nothing would satisfy him except the hellfire. He had a 19-year-old Pakistani maidservant and an 18-year-old Indian maidservant. From day one, he raped them against their wishes and thereafter they remained his sex slaves, locked up in his 2 residences. This Saudi guy would never allow any of his Saudi friends to step a foot in any one of his 4 opulent mansions. All Saudi men loved to visit their foreign friends' houses and see their wives and daughters, but they would not permit any one of those foreigners to come to their houses and view their totem animals. So, all those good-for-nothing Saudi friends of Osama had never called him to come and drink even a cup of tea or coffee in their houses. When Osama's lovely bride arrived from Sudan, the number of those lustful Saudis was double. Everyone saw her, passed the word to at least 2 other Saudi men. For over 4 months, those Saudi thugs were watching Inaz and lusting after her beautiful face and large backside. This went on until the fateful night in which her husband put her virtue in the gambling table and lost her to that wicked rapist, Mohammed bin al-Shaitan. So, now the cat out of the bag, therefore, every man wanted to sleep with the sexy Sudanese bride. Once again, Inaz was assaulted and raped inside her bedroom. She had to endure the same agonizing torture. This time, however, Inaz was informed by her rapist that he won her from her husband through gambling. When he was confronted by his wife, Osama refused to speak the truth. He said, he had spent most of the night drinking and having fun with his Saudi lover. Yet, again and again Inaz was raped by those Saudi thugs until finally she became pregnant. Her pregnancy was rather good news than bad news for her gay husband. Now, Osama could claim that he was the one who impregnated her. In that case, Osama thought, his wife Inaz could not accuse him of being a gay to her parents and his family. Meanwhile, the abused and brutally and repeatedly raped Sudanese bride found herself being caught up in a vicious cycle without any avenue of escape. Chapter 18. The Tomboy. The Sudanese embassy at the Riyadh city was one of the most crowded embassies in the Middle East. There were over 2 million Sudanese foreign workers employed by their Saudi kafils. The words kafil and makful correctly can be translated as master and his slave. The kafil could do anything to his makful. He could beat him, rape her, send him or her to jail, and kick them out of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia with or without giving a reason to the Saudi authorities. Wherefore, the kafil has the same authority and rights the husband has on his wife, the father on his daughter, and the brother over his sister. There is something in the Sharia law called Nizam al-Walaya, which means the guardianship system. In the West, a guardianship is a crucial legal tool that allows one person or entity to make decisions for other persons in the event that they become mentally or physically disabled. But, the guardianship system in a Muslim country gives the man's absolute control over his women. It treats the women as if they are incapacitated or disabled persons. It also treats them as minors or little children. According to that system, the woman can do nothing without the obtained permission of her husband, father, or brother. She cannot go out of the house without the permission and company of her husband or her wali, or a male muharram. Without his consent, she cannot get married, register herself in a school or university, obtain a passport, travel out of the country, etc., etc., etc. She is totally and completely under her wali's authority and control. Having explained that inhuman, uncivilized, bestial, barbarous, malicious, and enslaving system of controlling women, let us proceed with the sad life story of Inaz Ahmed Salah. On a particular Monday morning, a Sudanese girl was caught red-handed dressing up like a man. She tried to fool the authority at the Sudanese embassy by pretending to be a Sudanese boy who lost his passport and hence demanded reissue of a new passport. The girl managed to travel long distance from her husband's house to the Sudanese embassy without being recognized and arrested by the Saudi police. By doing so, the girl had committed many crimes, which all were punishable by the Sharia law. Firstly, she went out of her house without the knowledge and permission of her lawful husband. Secondly, she traveled out of her residence without the company of her husband or a male muharram. Thirdly, she appeared in public without putting on her hijab, abaya, or niqab. Fourth, instead she put on jeans and a t-shirt. Fifth, she fooled the Saudi police authorities by assuming the identity of a male. Sixth, she also lied to the Sudanese embassy's officials by claiming to be a single boy, when in reality she was a married woman. Seventh, she lied about her Sudanese passport. When the Sudanese embassy contacted her husband, they came to know that all her official papers were with him. Eighth, she tried to return to Sudan without the permission of her husband. Ninth, she lied about her husband by accusing him of being a gay and had a Saudi male lover, an addictive gambler, heavy drunkard, and pimp who used to gamble by her honor. 10th, she claimed that she had been imprisoned for 2 months by her husband. 11th, she also said, she had been raped by 7 of her husband's Saudi friends, with his knowledge and consent. Those 7 Saudi men allegedly raped her separately after they won her from her husband through gambling. 12th, she claimed to have been impregnated by one of her 7 rapists. 13th, she further claimed that she stayed 6 months with her Sudanese husband without the two having sex even once. With those serious crimes, the Sudanese embassy contacted the Riyadh police and handed to them the runaway Sudanese wife. The Riyadh police took the girl in custody and prepared a long list of crimes, which reached 37 offences. For each and every one of those offences, there was a corporeal punishment by the Islamic law. Accordingly, Inaz Ahmed Salah was arrested with very serious crimes, and if she got condemned by the Riyadh Sharia court, she would definitely either be beheaded or stoned to death. If she escaped those punishments, she might be scourged to death. Before her detention, Inaz remained under house arrest for 2 months. During this period, she tried to convince her husband to set her free and send her back to Sudan. She promised him that she won't expose him to her family and his family upon her return to her motherland. When her wicked husband refused to release her and continued to gamble by her honor, she decided to run away from him. She knew that she won't run away as a girl without exposing herself to the brutality of the Saudi policemen. So, she decided to hide herself under a fake identity. While her husband was away at work, she cut her long hair and made it into a boycut hairstyle. She then put on her husband's shirt and trouser. But her husband had less flesh than her. Therefore, his dress could not fully conceal her feminine body. To hide her big breasts, she used her husband's long turban and folded it 3 times around her chest and back shoulders. In that way, she reduced the size of her breasts. However, when it came to her big backside, she couldn't figure out any trick to reduce their size. Of course, she avoided applying any makeup. She then put on one of her husband's white hats. Those white hats and long turbans, her husband used in his prayers. Although, her husband was a gay, drunkard, gambler, chain smoker, and pimp, he never missed his Friday public prayer in the mosque. He also always prayed 5 times in a day to his Allah. Moreover, during the month of Ramadan, he fasted for 30 days. After that, Inaz stole some stuff from her husband's bag. She decided to sell those few items at the market and use the money to travel by the local transportation to the Sudanese embassy. Inaz's initial plan wasn't included to lodge a complaint against her husband at their embassy. She just wanted to request either reissuing of her passport or supplying her with emergency traveling document. Also, she decided to request the Sudanese embassy to give her an air return ticket to Khartoum. While she was studying in India, Inaz heard many Sudanese students lost their passports and became broke. When they went to the Sudanese embassy in New Delhi and explained their problems, they got free return tickets and emergency traveling documents. So, Inaz expected as a Sudanese citizen, she would get the same help from her embassy in the capital of Saudi Arabia. Inaz broke her window's glass and jumped down from the 2nd floor. Luckily, she didn't break her legs or injure her body through the jump. After that, she walked on foot for 2 hours until she reached a market. She then bartered her few items for cash in a Pakistani shop. She knew the Pakistani man had cheated her by offering her a few rials for items worth hundreds of rials. Among the items she sold was her husband's expensive watch and her golden wedding ring. Her husband had taken all her other costly jewelry, such as bangles, necklace, earrings, bracelets, etc. Those were in pure gold. Her jewelry worth thousands of US dollars. But, her useless husband lost all of them in gambling. Inaz traveled for 1 hour by a bus until she reached her embassy. No one had recognized her during her 3 hours moving in public without her husband or Muharram. Even inside her embassy no one had suspected that she wasn't a boy. Inaz filled the necessary forms and stated her problem. Her application had been received and taken inside for a senior officer to approve it. Inaz would never have been recognized if she didn't make one single mistake. While waiting for her application to be approved, she felt the need to go to the washroom. She got up from her chair and went to one of the Sudanese employees and asked him to show her the ladies' washroom. This was her first mistake. She forgot that she was dressed up as a boy and pretending to be a male. Even the man she talked to him didn't notice the discrepancy in her request. He just pointed the direction to the ladies' washroom and resumed his work. Unfortunately, Inaz went to the women's washroom. When she walked in, she found one young girl holding her dress up to her waist with one hand and her other hand was trying to adjust her underwear. The young girl made the loudest shout that one could ever make when she saw a young boy was coming towards her. The girl mistook Inaz for a male who came to rape her. It was too late when Inaz realized her fatal mistake. 6 security guards, 4 females and 2 males, responded immediately and entered the ladies' washroom. They all thought that Inaz was a boy who came to rape the young girl. Shortly after Inaz was hit on her head by a baton and subdued, other employees and workers arrived at the crime scene. Also, many of the visitors came to see what had happened inside the ladies' washroom. It was the Sudanese employee who directed Inaz to the ladies' washroom who cast the first doubt on her true identity. He told the security guards that Inaz asked him to show her the ladies' washroom. He then screened the body of Inaz for a while before he declared her a female and not a male. Immediately, the 4 female guards sent everybody out of the ladies' washroom and took Inaz inside a large room and ordered her to remove all her clothes including her underwear. At first, Inaz refused to obey their orders. One huge female security guard from a Nigerian background grabbed Inaz's shirt and about to tear it out of her body. Inaz knew she was exposed and hence pleaded guilty. Nonetheless, the 4 ladies compelled her to strip fully naked before them. When they saw her black pubic hair covering her privates, her large bums, and big boobs, they placed her under arrest. Later on, when she was questioned by some senior officers, Inaz revealed her problem with her husband from A to Z. Unfortunately, being a woman in a male-dominated society like Saudi Arabia, her confession was used against her. Chapter 19. A Sudanese wife with 2 husbands. When questioned by the Riyadh police, Osama Hashim Salah strongly denied all the allegations against him. He accused his wife of purposely lying because she was in love with her Sudanese neighbor. He even claimed to have caught her talking to her lover on the phone. He added that, his wife confessed to him that she still loved her neighbor and wanted to be with him. She also told him that, her father had forced her to marry him against her wish. For that reason, she demanded a divorce, but he refused to divorce her. Moreover, for a long time, his wife refused to allow him to consummate their marriage. And her continuous denial led him eventually to take by force what Allah and His Prophet had granted to him. So, Inaz's husband claimed to have impregnated her against her will. He did it because he wanted her to submit to his authority as her lawful husband. No matter what he had done to her, Inaz continued to rebel against him. She threatened him that, if he wouldn't give her a divorce and send her back to Sudan, she would accuse him that he was a gay, gambler, and pimp. Osama said further that, when he didn't yield to her demands and threats, his wife stole his money and other expensive stuff from his house and ran away while he was away at work. Inaz's legal case became very serious crime when a couple of Sudanese students who studied with her in India came forward and exposed her sinful life in Pune city. Those 2 Sudanese were ones of those terrorist students who used to act as the righteous police of Allah in India. Through their testimonies, the Riyadh police came to know that Inaz used to cohabit with her Sudanese neighbor without marriage. When all the Sudanese students protested about their shameful adulterous relation, the Emir of the Muslim Brothers and Sisters in Pune city compelled the adulterer Tariq and the adulteress Inaz to get married. But, Inaz's father came to India and took his daughter and returned to Sudan. Before they flew back to Sudan, the father went to the Emir and had a big fight with him. He then tore the marriage contract of his daughter and threw it on the face of the Emir. Without divorcing his daughter from her first husband, the father gave her in marriage to her cousin who was working as a senior accountant in Saudi Arabia. If the Sharia court in Riyadh found a proof that Inaz got married to another man while she was still bound by another marriage contract, then it would pass the stoning sentence against her. Accordingly, the statements of those 2 Sudanese who were former classmates of Inaz had changed the course of her trial. Now the police began to focus more on the last accusation of marrying 2 men at the same time. Inaz's legal case leaked to the media. Every newspaper in the capital of Saudi Arabia published it under the sensational headline, "A Sudanese wife with 2 husbands." Osama was astonished when he read the disturbing news about his wife Inaz. Before that, he heard through some of his friends in Khartoum that his fiancée was having a secret affair with the son of her rich neighbor. Being a gay and had a male lover, such information never bothered him at that time. On the contrary, it brought some hope to him. He thought, Inaz would break their engagement and marry the son of her wealthy neighbor instead. But now, it seemed that Inaz's father had fooled his father and conducted the marriage of his already married daughter. Now Osama understood that, he had enough ammunition in his hands to silence his wife forever. By running away from him, he concluded, Inaz condemned herself rather than exposed him. He could deny all her accusations in court and she had no way of proving that he gambled by her honor and allowed his Saudi friends to rape her with his knowledge and consent. Also, she had no evidence to provide in court that he was a gay and had a Saudi lover. Furthermore, she wouldn't be able to prove that he had not slept with her even though she lived under his roof for 6 months. On the other hand, her pregnancy would refute her claim that her husband was a gay and impotent man. The court would assume her husband was the father of her yet-to-be-born baby. Osama knew there was no DNA test in Saudi Arabia if Inaz asked the Sharia court to determine the paternity of her baby. Lastly, Osama knew and understood that, even Inaz's parents and his family would not believe her words against him. In addition, the testimony of a woman in the Sharia court equals half of the testimony of a man. Besides his testimony, Osama knew that he could bring more than 7 men in court to bear witness in his favor. This time, the Sudanese lawyer, Mr. Ahmed Salah, got the disturbing news about his daughter's arrest neither through the media nor via the police of Riyadh City. It was his own brother, the Sudanese medical doctor, Mr. Hashim Salah, who came to his office and broke the shocking news to his proud brother. With shaking hands and heart beating like a drum, Mr. Ahmed Salah read the newspaper, which had been handed to him by Mr. Hashim Salah. For a few seconds, the proud lawyer's soul started to depart from his body and descend downwards. He was now in an ontological state between the living and the dead. If his brother didn't hold him in time, he would have dropped dead. Then, Mr. Hashim Salah handed a glass of water to his dying brother and asked him to drink it. After gulping down the water, the proud man's soul returned back. He was still not in a position to utter a word. His body was burning and sweating as if he was inside a furnace. Mr. Hashim Salah had many things to say, but he scared his brother might have a major heart attack and die in front of him. So, he waited for Mr. Ahmed Salah to overcome the shock first before any confrontation was made from his side. The angry Sudanese doctor came to challenge and confront the proud Sudanese lawyer. But now, both their anger and pride disappeared. The acts of their children abroad had turned their pride and prejudice into shame and fear. "My brother," Mr. Ahmed Salah said with a faint voice that begging for mercy. "My brother Hashim," the Sudanese lawyer repeated his request. "You must go to the good man Mr. Harun al-Ajabo and convince him to tell his beloved son Tariq to save the life of my only child Inaz. Tariq has to give a statement under oath that he had divorced his wife Inaz before she had married her cousin Osama Hashim Salah. That is the only way my daughter's life can be saved from those Saudi thugs. So it is true that your daughter has married the son of a Karabi. And without divorcing her from him, you contracted her in marriage to my son. No, that is a lie. My daughter has never married any man except her highly educated cousin, Osama Hashim Salah. You have just asked me to go and request the Karabi's son to divorce your daughter. My brother Hashim, do you think I would give my Arab daughter in marriage to a boy whose father is from the Fur tribe and his mother from the Noba Mountains? I don't think you could do that. The so-called marriage of my daughter to that black crow was a sham marriage. It wasn't marriage at all." A Karabi leader of the Sudanese Muslim Brotherhood in India who also from the Fur tribe had forced my daughter to marry against her wish the son of my former neighbor, Harun al-Ajabo. That same wicked Karabi leader acted as wali to my daughter and got her married by force to Tariq. Why did he do that? My brother Hashim, it is a long story. It was an evil conspiracy plotted against my beloved daughter. It was done with the intention of humiliating my Arab daughter and destroying her good reputation. Nonetheless, when I heard about it, I had immediately rushed to India and I had almost killed my daughter in Pune city. My wife had a major heart attack when she came to know about that pseudo marriage. Well, I believe you, my brother. Now we have to join hands and find a quick solution to save our children from those fanatic Saudi policemen. Yes, we must do that and do it very fast. We must go both of us to Mr. Harun al-Ajabo and request him to convince his son Tariq to give in writing a statement that he had divorced my daughter Inez before she had married your son Osama. Yes, we must go to them right away. Chapter 20. A Friend in Need. On the day of her arrest, Inaz was severely flogged by a huge Saudi policewoman. Through that enhanced interrogation techniques, she was forced to admit to everything that was written against her. For dressing as a man and running away from her husband, the Riyadh police accused her of committing 5 serious offences. For venturing out of her house without the knowledge, consent, and company of her husband or male muharram, she was guilty of committing other 4 offences. For appearing in public without the compulsory woman's Islamic clothes, she was guilty of other 3 offences. For lying to the Sudanese embassy and demanding the reissuing of her passport and air ticket, she added yet other 6 offences. Because she entered the ladies' washroom, while dressed up as a man and frightened the hell out of an innocent Muslim female, she was held guilty of 3 offences. Yet, by exposing the nakedness of the same good citizen female, she added to her list of crimes 2 more offences. By falsely accusing her lawful husband of being a drunkard, gambler, gay, and pimp, Inaz committed very terrible 4 offences. Furthermore, by saying that her husband had never slept with her though she stayed with him for 6 months, she was guilty of maliciously defaming a good Muslim man with the intention of destroying his reputation and his life as well. Lastly, by claiming that her husband had sold her as a sex slave to 7 Saudi men through gambling, Inaz was guilty of falsely accusing good 7 Saudi citizens plus her husband. Finally, Inaz was told her pregnancy had refuted all her false accusations against her husband. In consequence of her escape from her house, Inaz Ahmed Salah had committed 37 criminal acts. Nevertheless, when those 2 Muslim student terrorists approached the Riyadh police after 3 days from the day she got detained, and exposed her sinful life and marital status in India, Inaz Rabshid hit a record of 50 offences. No human being in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia had ever been suspected of such unbelievable number of crimes. Even the Indian-born English novelist and critic, Salman Rushdie, who wrote the Satanic Verses, and the American pastor, Terry Jones, who burned the Holy Quran of Muslims, had not committed the number of offences that the Sudanese woman had committed. It had never happened in the Muslim world that a woman had dared to marry 2 men at the same time. That abominable act had not happened even in the lands of the infidels, who allowed a man to marry a man and a woman to wed another woman. So, Inaz's so-called greatest crimes were boiled down to one great crime of having 2 husbands at the same time. For that reason, the Sudanese lawyer, Mr. Ahmed Salah, who studied the Islamic law at the greatest Islamic center of learning, the prestigious Al-Azhar Al-Sharif University in Cairo, had ignored all those 101 offences against his daughter and focused on that last one. He knew and understood that, if his daughter stood before the Islamic judges at the Sharia court in Riyadh with that terrible crime of having 2 husbands at the same time, even the Prophet Muhammad himself wouldn't save her from the stoning sentence. He read in the newspaper that his daughter had run away from her husband, dressed up as a man, accused her cousin brother and husband of being a gay and gambler who sold his wife as a sex slave to other men, and so on and so on. Nevertheless, the Sudanese lawyer ignored all those accusations and decided at once to find a quick solution to the last offense. When the 2 frightened brothers arrived at the residence of the good man Mr. Harun Al-Ajabo and fell at his feet and begged him to convince his son to make the statement, the so-called Black Karabi assured them he would fly in person to Egypt and obtain their request from his son. Mr. Ahmed Salah kissed the hands of Mr. Harun Al-Ajabo and thanked him 1,000,000 times. Moreover, he also volunteered to fly to Cairo with the wealthy business tycoon and meet his good son Tariq and kiss his hands and feet and beg him to save the life of his former neighbor and friend Inaz. Tariq cried as if he lost his parents when he learned that his beloved Inaz was in a Saudi prison and accused with that terrible crime of having 2 husbands at the same time. When he overcame his sorrow, he determined not only to make the statement of divorcing her, but he suggested to Inaz's father and his father to go in person and repeat verbally the same statement inside the Riyadh Sharia court. Mr. Ahmed Salah fell on his knees and wept like a baby upon hearing the words of the boy whom he used to hate from the deepest of his heart. Once again, the Sudanese lawyer decided to travel to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia with the son of their former neighbors. Mr. Alajabo approved the decision of his son and encouraged him to go in person and save the life of his friend Inaz. Tariq Harun Alajabo had already travelled many times with his family to Saudi Arabia to perform the Hajj rituals. Accordingly, his application for a visa to the Riyadh city was instantly approved. But, the application of the Sudanese lawyer, Mr. Ahmed Salah, was rejected without giving any reason. No matter how he pleaded and how he requested to be allowed to fly to Riyadh and attend the trial of his daughter, the Saudi ambassador at Cairo refused to change his decision. Even the Sudanese business tycoon, Mr. Harun Alajabo, met the ambassador personally and begged him to allow his good friend, the Sudanese lawyer, Mr. Ahmed Salah, to go to the capital of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and attend the trial of his beloved daughter Inaz, but the Saudi diplomat refused to acquiesce. Finally, when nothing worked, Inaz's father and Tariq's father gave the friend in need their blessings and sent him to the kingdom of Tartarus to save the life of his beloved from the jaws of death.